The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and I watched the golden liquid spread like blood across the white tiles. My husband, my former husband in my last life, stood at the altar with my sister, Elena, both of them turning to stare at me with expressions of shock and barely concealed irritation. Mira? Elena's voice dripped with false concern. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was 26 years old, standing in the reception hall of the Grand Bellevue Hotel, watching the man I'd loved for 8 years marry my younger sister. The same man who'd told me 3 months before our wedding that he couldn't marry me because my laugh was too loud, too obnoxious, too annoying for someone of his social standing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I knew exactly what was coming next. In approximately 45 seconds, my mother would approach me with that tight smile she reserved for my public humiliations. She'd place her hand on my shoulder, too tight, her nails digging in through the thin fabric of my bridesmaid dress, and she'd whisper that I was embarrassing the family. Again, I knew because I'd lived this moment before. I died that night. Heart attack, the doctor said. Stress-induced cardiac arrest at 26. What they didn't know was that my heart had already been broken so many times, it simply gave up. But then I woke up. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, in my 14-year-old body, with every single memory of the 12 years that had led to my death burned into my mind like a brand. I remembered everything, every insult, every manipulation, every time my family had chosen Elena over me, every sacrifice I'd made that they'd taken for granted, every dream I'd deferred so my sister could shine. And I remembered him, Marcus Chen. The boy I'd meet at 16, date through college, get engaged to at 24, and who would ultimately leave me for my sister at 26. Standing there in that reception hall, or rather, standing in the memory of it as my 14-year-old self lay in bed, I made a decision. This time, they would never hear my laugh again. Not because it was annoying, but because I would give them nothing. No joy, no love, no sacrifice. This time, I would take everything. The abuse hadn't started dramatically. It never does. When I was 6 and Elena was 4, my mother began the comparisons. Why can't you be more graceful like Elena? Elena never needs to be told twice. Look at how pretty Elena looks in that dress. Maybe if you stopped eating so much, you'd look nice too. My father, a prominent corporate lawyer, was largely absent. When he was home, he was either working or entertaining Elena, who he called his little princess. I was just Mira. Sometimes he forgot my name entirely, calling me the older one. By the time I was 10, the pattern was set. Elena got the best room, the newest clothes, the expensive tutors. I got hand-me-downs and criticism. When we both wanted piano lessons, they paid for Elena's and told me we couldn't afford to. When we both applied to elite summer programs, they wrote glowing recommendation letters for Elena and told me I should be more realistic about my abilities. But I didn't give up. I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, made them proud, they would finally see me. So I worked. I studied until midnight every night, maintained a 4.0 GPA, volunteered at 3 different organizations, learned to code on my own because we couldn't afford computer classes for both of us. I made myself useful, indispensable. And they took everything I offered and gave nothing back. When I was 16, I met Marcus at a volunteer event. He was handsome, charming, from a wealthy family that owned a chain of luxury hotels. He noticed me. He said my laugh was beautiful, that my enthusiasm for life was refreshing. For the first time, someone saw me as more than Elena's lesser sister. I fell completely, desperately in love. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until I was 25, was that Marcus had initially approached me because his parents wanted him to settle down, and I came from a respectable family with good connections. I was safe, reliable, boring. Perfect for a strategic marriage. Elena, on the other hand, was exciting, beautiful, fun. Everything I wasn't. They started their affair when I was 24. I was working 70-hour weeks at a consulting firm to save money for our wedding while going to night school for my MBA. Because Marcus said his parents would be more impressed if I had an advanced degree. I was exhausted, stressed, and apparently no longer fun to be around. My laugh had become annoying. My ambition was aggressive. My success was threatening. Suddenly, all the things he'd claimed to love about me were flaws. He left me 3 months before our wedding. My mother blamed me for not being more attentive. My father said I should have seen it coming. Elena apologized with tears in her eyes while wearing the designer earrings Marcus had lost 2 months earlier. They were married 6 months after that. I was a bridesmaid. Because that's what good sisters do. I spent the next year in a downward spiral. I quit my job, my MBA program, moved back in with my parents because I couldn't afford my apartment without Marcus's financial contribution. My mother made sure I knew what a burden I was. My father avoided me entirely. Elena's wedding reception was a showcase of everything I'd lost. She wore the dress I'd picked out. They honeymooned in the Maldives, where Marcus and I had planned to go. She posted photos of her perfect life while I served drinks to guests who pitied me. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my childhood bedroom, the smaller one, the one without the bay window, and I felt my chest tighten. The pain was excruciating. I couldn't breathe. I reached for my phone but couldn't dial. I died. Alone at 26, in a house full of people who'd never really loved me. And then I woke up at 14. The first thing I did was laugh. A real, genuine laugh that echoed through my childhood bedroom. It felt like power. Then I got to work. I had 12 years of knowledge about the future. Stock movements, real estate trends, which startups would explode and which would fail, technological innovations, political shifts. I had seen the trajectory of my family's business. My father's law firm would merge with a larger company in 5 years, making him a junior partner instead of senior. My mother's side business selling artisanal soaps would fail spectacularly. Elena's modeling dreams would crash when she developed a thyroid condition at 22. And Marcus, his family's hotel chain would face a scandal when they were caught in a discrimination lawsuit. They'd survive, but their reputation would take years to recover. I knew all this, and I knew exactly how to use it. The first rule of revenge is patience. I couldn't drastically change my behavior overnight without arousing suspicion. So I played the part of the studious, eager-to-please older daughter. But this time, I wasn't doing it for their approval. At 14, I convinced my parents to let me get a part-time job at a local bookstore. I told them it would look good on college applications. What I didn't tell them was that I was saving every penny. In 6 months, I'd have enough to open a brokerage account under my name. I was 15 when I made my first investment. A small tech company called Nebula Systems was about to release a revolutionary cloud storage platform. In my past life, their stock had increased by 3,000% over 3 years. I put every dollar I had into it. I was 16 when Marcus Chen walked into the volunteer event where we'd first met. This time, when he approached me with that calculated smile, I knew exactly what he was. "You have a beautiful laugh," he said, just like before. I smiled politely. "Thank you." And I turned away. I watched his face cycle through confusion, determination, and finally, intrigue. Good. Let him wonder. Let him chase. But I had no intention of being caught. Instead, I focused on building my empire. My Nebula stock split twice and grew exactly as I'd predicted. By 17, I had $200,000. I diversified into real estate, buying properties I knew would triple in value, and into carefully selected stocks that I remembered as success stories. My parents noticed I was spending more time on my laptop but assumed I was studying. Elena noticed that I'd stopped fawning over her and became jealous of the attention my mysterious behavior was getting. Marcus noticed that I was no longer interested in him and became obsessed with winning me back. I gave them all nothing. No information, no emotion, no vulnerability. I was polite, pleasant, and utterly unreachable. When my mother asked why I was being so cold, I smiled and said I was focused on my future. When Elena complained that I never wanted to hang out anymore, I said I was busy with work. When Marcus asked me out, again and again, I said I wasn't interested in dating. My laugh, once so frequent and genuine, became a rare sound. I used it strategically, sparingly, only when I wanted to unsettle someone with its absence. At 18, I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Princeton. My parents were thrilled. Finally, I was making them look good. Elena, who'd barely maintained a 3.0, was going to a local college. I could see the shift beginning. My father started introducing me as my daughter, the Princeton student. My mother bragged to her friends about my achievements. Elena's resentment grew like a cancer. But I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing this for me. At Princeton, I triple majored in computer science, economics, and business. I graduated in 3 years instead of 4 because I already knew the material. While my classmates partied, I built connections with professors, identified future innovators, and continued growing my portfolio. By 21, 5 years younger than when I died, I was a millionaire. My parents didn't know. I'd kept my finances completely separate, using a P.O. box for all my banking information, and operating under an LLC I'd created at 18. As far as they knew, I was a successful student with a promising future. Nothing more. Elena, meanwhile, had dropped out of college and was trying to launch a modeling career. In my past life, this had worked for a few years. This time, I made sure it didn't. I hired a private investigator to compile information about the modeling agencies Elena was targeting. Then I anonymously sent evidence of their predatory practices to major media outlets. The resulting scandal destroyed several agencies, including the one that would have signed Elena. Was it cruel? Perhaps. But I remembered Elena stealing my internship opportunity by pretending to be me in an email exchange. I remembered her borrowing my savings to buy designer bags she never returned. I remembered her seducing my fiancé and then acting like the victim when I was hurt. She deserved worse. Marcus, still fixated on the girl who'd rejected him, graduated from business school and joined his family's hotel empire. I knew he was planning to expand into international markets, specifically targeting Southeast Asia. I also knew that his first major deal would be with a resort developer who was about to be exposed for environmental violations. I made sure the exposure happened 6 months earlier than it had in my original timeline. Marcus's family lost $50 million in the deal. I watched from afar as his father's hair went gray practically overnight, as Marcus scrambled to repair the damage, as his reputation as a business prodigy crumbled, and I felt nothing but satisfaction. At 22, I founded my own company, Stellar Tech Solutions, a cybersecurity firm that specialized in protecting businesses from data breaches. I knew exactly which security vulnerabilities would be exploited over the next few years and designed my products to prevent them. The company exploded. Within a year, we were valued at $100 million. Within 2, it was $500 million. By the time I was 24, the age I'd gotten engaged to Marcus in my previous life, I was worth over $1 billion, and my family had no idea. I'd kept everything under wraps, using a professional facade and trusted intermediaries. My parents still thought I was just a successful young professional working for a tech company. They were proud but not overly interested in the details. That was about to change. It was my 25th birthday when I decided it was time. Time to show them exactly who I'd become. Time to take everything they'd ever denied me. Time for the climax they'd never see coming. My father's law firm was struggling. The merger I'd remembered had fallen through due to some financial irregularities. Irregularities I'd made sure were discovered at exactly the right time. He was desperate for new clients, particularly corporate clients who could bring in significant revenue. I called him from my office using my personal cell phone. "Dad, it's Mira." "Oh, Mira. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Are you coming to dinner tonight? Your mother made reservations." Sweetheart. He'd never called me that before. At least, not that I remembered. "Actually, Dad, I wanted to talk to you about something. Business-related." His tone shifted, became more interested. "Oh, what kind of business?" "I've been following your firm's recent challenges. I think I might have a solution." There was a pause. "How do you know about that?" "I pay attention. Look, I know you need corporate clients. What if I told you I could bring you one worth potentially millions in annual legal fees?" "I'd say you have my full attention." "Good. Stellar Tech Solutions needs a new law firm. Our current one isn't meeting our needs. I convinced the CEO to consider your firm if you can prove you're up to the task." "Stellar Tech? They're one of the fastest growing companies in the country." "Mira, how do you have that kind of connection?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I'll explain at dinner. 7 o'clock? We'll be there." I hung up and looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. Everything was falling into place. That evening, I arrived at Le Bernardin in a custom Armani suit, my hair styled by a celebrity hairstylist, wearing jewelry worth more than my parents' house. My driver dropped me off in a black Mercedes S-Class. My parents were already seated along with Elena, who'd been told to come because it's Mira's birthday. Marcus was notably absent. He wasn't invited to family dinners anymore since I'd never dated him in this timeline. The look on their faces when I walked in was everything I'd dreamed of. My mother's mouth literally dropped open. My father stood up, confused. Elena looked like she'd been slapped. "Hi, family," I said pleasantly, sliding into my seat. "Thanks for meeting me." "Mira," my mother managed, "you look different." "Thank you. I've had a good few years." A waiter appeared immediately, clearly recognizing me. "Ms. Donovan, wonderful to see you again. Your usual table?" "This one is fine tonight, James. Thank you." My family stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Your usual table?" Elena hissed. I smiled at her, a real smile, but one with an edge. "I eat here fairly regularly. The tasting menu is exceptional." "Mira," my father interrupted. What's going on?" "You said something about Stellar Tech?" "Right. Let's order first, shall we? Then we can talk business." The dinner that followed was perhaps the most satisfying meal of either of my lives. I ordered the most expensive items on the menu with casual confidence, recommended wines that made the sommelier's eyes light up, and generally behaved like someone who belonged in a 3 Michelin-star restaurant. My family fumbled through the meal like tourists. Elena couldn't figure out which fork to use. My mother kept looking at the prices and wincing. My father was so focused on whatever business proposition I had that he barely tasted his food. Finally, over dessert, he couldn't wait anymore. "Okay, Mira, explain. How do you have an in with Stellar Tech?" I set down my wine glass. "I don't have an in with Stellar Tech, Dad. I am Stellar Tech." Silence. "What?" my mother said finally. "I founded the company 4 years ago. We're currently valued at $500 million and on track to go public next year at a valuation between $2 to $3 billion. I own 65% of the shares. I'm the CEO." Elena laughed. Actually laughed. "That's ridiculous. You're, 25? Companies like that aren't run by 25-year-olds. They are when those 25-year-olds are prodigies who saw a market gap and exploited it." I pulled out my phone and opened our company website, navigating to the leadership page. There was my photo, Mira Donovan, founder and CEO. I handed the phone to my father. He stared at it for a long moment. "This is real?" "Completely. I've been building this since I was 18. I kept it quiet because I wanted to make sure it was successful before involving family. No offense, but I've seen how you all react to my achievements." That landed like a bomb. My mother flushed. Elena's eyes narrowed. My father, to his credit, looked ashamed. "Mira, we had no idea." "Of course you didn't. You never asked. You assumed I was just another corporate drone, someone who'd be grateful for whatever scraps you threw my way. Meanwhile, I've been building an empire." "An empire?" Elena scoffed. "God, listen to yourself. You sound like a villain in a bad movie." "No, Elena. I sound like someone who stopped waiting for your approval and took what I wanted. There's a difference." My mother reached for my hand, which I deliberately moved away. "Honey, this is wonderful news. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Would you have believed me? Or would you have done what you always did? Assume Elena was better, more deserving, more worthy of support?" The waiter arrived with the check, which I took immediately. The total was over $3,000. I handed him my black card without even looking at the amount. "Mira," my father said carefully, "about the law firm." "Right. I'm going to need comprehensive corporate legal services, contract review, intellectual property protection, merger and acquisition support, international business law. Your firm is small, but you have some talented people. If you can scale up and prove you can handle our needs, I'll make you our primary legal counsel." That's conservatively $5 million per year in fees, likely more as we grow. His eyes widened. $5 million? Minimum. But there are conditions. Name them. First, you'll need to hire at least 10 more attorneys within 6 months, all specialized in tech law. I'll provide a list of candidates I've vetted. Second, you'll need to open an office in San Francisco. Third, and this is non-negotiable, you work for me. Not as my father, but as my attorney. That means no special treatment, no asking for favors, no family drama interfering with business. Can you do that? He nodded slowly. Yes. Absolutely. Good. My assistant will send over the preliminary contract tomorrow. We'll start with a 6-month trial period. Elena, who'd been quiet through this exchange, finally exploded. This is insane. You're just going to use your money to control everyone? I turned to her and I let her see the truth in my eyes. Control? No, Elena. I'm going to use my success to protect myself from people who've spent my entire life trying to diminish me. There's a difference. We're your family. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're people who share my DNA but have never actually acted like family. You took my clothes, my opportunities, my confidence. You've spent your entire life being prioritized while I scraped for any recognition. And now that I have something you want, now that I'm successful, suddenly you care? My mother's face hardened. That's not fair, Mira. We always loved you. Did you? Then why did you compare me to Elena my entire childhood? Why did you pay for her piano lessons but not mine? Why did you write her recommendation letters and tell me to be more realistic? Why did you just last year tell me I should consider being Elena's assistant since her modeling career was taking off? She had no answer. None of them did. I stood up, smoothing my suit jacket. I need to go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Dad, expect those contracts. Elena, Mom, it was enlightening to see you. I left them sitting there, stunned and confused. As I walked out to my waiting car, I heard my mother start to cry. I felt nothing. The next 6 months were a masterclass in strategic demolition. My father's firm scrambled to meet my requirements. They hired new attorneys, opened the San Francisco office, restructured their entire operation around tech law. It was good for them, actually. My business attracted other tech companies, and within months, they were genuinely successful. But my father never forgot that it was me who saved him. Every interaction was colored by that knowledge. I wasn't his disappointing older daughter anymore. I was his biggest client, the person who'd rescued his failing firm, the daughter he should have invested in all along. The guilt ate at him. I could see it every time we met. Good. My mother tried to rewrite history. Suddenly, she remembered all the times she'd supported me. She told her friends that she'd always known I'd be successful, that she'd encouraged my entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. She showed them photos from my childhood as if they were evidence of her good parenting. I let her have her delusions. It didn't matter what she told people. I knew the truth. Elena, however, refused to accept the new reality. Her modeling career had stalled completely, partially because of the agency scandals, partially because she simply wasn't as special as everyone had told her she was. She'd gained weight due to her thyroid condition, which developed exactly on schedule, and the industry that had promised her stardom had moved on to younger, fresher faces. She blamed me. Somehow, in her mind, my success was directly responsible for her failures. She started posting on social media about fake people and family betrayal. She gave interviews to small blogs about how money changes people and success going to someone's head. She tried to position herself as the victim of my ambition. I ignored her. For months, I simply pretended she didn't exist. Until she made a mistake. Elena, desperate for relevance, started claiming that Stellar Tech had been her idea. She told people that she'd come up with the concept and I'd stolen it. She went on a podcast and tearfully explained how her older sister had taken credit for her innovation and built a company on her intellectual property. It was a lie, of course, a complete fabrication. But it got attention. Media outlets started picking up the story. Sister claims Tech2 CEO stole her idea, made for good headlines. That's when I struck. I released everything, every email, every text message, every documented instance of Elena's behavior over the years. I had kept records of everything from my past life. I'd recreated conversations, saved evidence, documented patterns of abuse, and I'd spent years in this timeline building an airtight case. I showed the world Elena's academic dishonesty, papers she'd plagiarized, assignments she'd copied from me. I showed them financial records of money she'd borrowed and never returned. I showed them screenshots of messages where she'd deliberately sabotaged my opportunities or relationships. And then I did something truly damaging. I showed them the truth about her modeling career. I released photos from her portfolio where she'd been heavily edited, alongside the unedited versions. I showed how she'd lied about her measurements, her bookings, her success. I revealed that most of her professional shoots had been unpaid or low-budget affairs, that she'd never actually been signed to a major agency, that her entire career was built on social media smoke and mirrors. The internet was merciless. Within 24 hours, Elena was a laughingstock. Memes about her spread across Twitter and TikTok. Her credibility was completely destroyed. Brand deals she'd been hoping for evaporated. Her social media following dropped by 70%. My mother called me, crying. How could you do this to your sister? How could I tell the truth? Pretty easily, actually. She accused me of theft. I simply provided evidence that she's been the thief all along. She's family, Mira. So am I, but you've never treated me like it. I hung up. My father tried a different approach. He invited me to lunch, just the two of us. We met at a steakhouse near his office, not as fancy as where I'd taken them before, but nice enough. Mira, he started, I know we haven't always... I know I wasn't the best father to you. That's an understatement. He winced. I'm trying to apologize. Are you? Because it sounds like you're trying to minimize what you did. You weren't not the best father. You were absent. You forgot my birthdays, missed my graduations, couldn't be bothered to show up to anything that mattered to me. You had 2 daughters, and you chose one, every single time. I know, and I'm sorry. Your mother, she wanted Elena to have opportunities. She felt like you were naturally smart, naturally capable, and Elena needed more help. So instead of giving us both support, you gave her everything and me nothing? I'm not defending it, Mira. I'm just trying to explain. Don't. I don't want your explanations. I don't need them anymore. I needed them when I was 10 years old and wondering why my father didn't love me. I needed them when I was 16 and working 3 jobs to save money for college because you spent my education fund on Elena's modeling workshops. I needed them when I was 21 and watching Elena get a new car for her birthday while you couldn't even remember mine. He looked down at his untouched steak. What do you want from me, Mira? Nothing. That's the point. I don't want anything from you anymore. I did this without you. I became successful despite you. And now you want to claim credit or make amends or whatever this is, but it's too late. It's never too late for family. I laughed, not my old laugh, the one they'd called annoying, but something colder, sharper. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to neglect me for 25 years and then claim family when I become useful. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. I'll continue working with your firm because you're good at your job and it benefits my company. But don't mistake a business relationship for reconciliation. We're not family. We're business associates who happen to share DNA. I left him sitting there. The steak was excellent. I'd had the leftovers packaged and gave them to my driver. The final confrontation came on what would have been my wedding day in my previous life. The day I would have married Marcus Chen while he secretly planned to leave me for Elena. Instead, I was hosting the launch party for Stellar Tech's IPO at the Grand Bellevue Hotel, the same hotel where Elena and Marcus had their wedding reception in my past life. The symmetry was intentional. The event was spectacular. Every major tech player was there, along with investors, media, and business leaders. I'd spared no expense. Ice sculptures, a famous DJ, catering from 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, an open bar with premium everything. I wore a custom white Versace gown, not a wedding dress, but close enough to make a point. My hair was styled in intricate braids adorned with diamonds. I looked like a queen. The stock market had closed an hour earlier. Stellar Tech's IPO had been the most successful tech debut in like 5 years. The opening price had been $45 per share. It closed at $87. My 65% stake was now worth $2.3 billion. I was a billionaire at 25. The party was at its height when I saw them enter. My parents, Elena, and unexpectedly, Marcus Chen. I'd invited my parents out of courtesy. They were still my father's clients after all, and appearances mattered in business. But Elena and Marcus? They'd found their way in somehow. I watched them navigate the crowd, watched Elena's face as she took in the opulence, the power, the sheer magnitude of what I'd built. She was wearing what was clearly her best dress, something she'd probably spent $500 on and thought was expensive. It looked cheap next to what everyone else was wearing. Marcus, on the other hand, looked like he'd seen a ghost. I hadn't kept tabs on him as closely as the others, but I knew his family's business had suffered. The hotel chain was struggling after the scandal I'd engineered, and his personal reputation had never recovered. He'd been demoted to a regional manager position, a far cry from the executive track he'd been on. Now he stood in one of his family's hotels, watching the woman he'd dismissed as too boring, too loud, too annoying, celebrate a success that dwarfed anything he'd ever achieved. I made him wait. I circulated, chatting with investors, posing for photos, giving interviews to major publications. I was in my element, confident and commanding. Every so often, I'd catch his eye and then deliberately look away. Finally, as the party began to wind down, he approached me. Mira. I turned as if surprised to see him. Marcus, I didn't know you were coming. Your sister invited me, as her +1. Of course she had. Elena, in a last desperate attempt to hurt me, had brought the man I'd supposedly loved. What she didn't know was that I'd never loved him in this timeline. I'd barely thought about him. How nice, I said pleasantly. Are you enjoying the party? He looked uncomfortable. It's impressive. Everything you've built is impressive. Thank you. There was an awkward pause. He seemed to be working up to something. Mira, I wanted to say, I've been thinking about, do you remember when we met at that volunteer event? Vaguely. That was 9 years ago? His face fell. In my previous life, that meeting had been the most important moment of my teenage years. Now I could barely remember the details. Right, well, I've always wondered what might have happened if we'd stayed in touch, if things had gone differently. I understood what he was doing. He was testing the waters, seeing if there was still a chance. In his mind, I was single, successful, and probably lonely. Maybe, just maybe, he could position himself as the one who got away. I smiled, genuinely this time, because the delusion was so complete. Marcus, I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what might have happened because I've never spent a moment thinking about it. You were a stranger who hit on me at a charity event. I said no. That was the beginning and end of our relationship. But you thought what? That I'd been pining for you? That I built all of this hoping you'd notice me? I gestured around the ballroom. Marcus, I built this despite people like you. Despite everyone who ever underestimated me, dismissed me, or told me I wasn't good enough. You're just another face in that crowd. Elena appeared at his side, linking her arm through his possessively. Having fun, Mira? Immensely. Thank you for asking. Must be nice, she said, her voice dripping with acid. Having all this money to throw around. Really makes you forget where you came from. I haven't forgotten anything, Elena. That's the difference between us. You want to forget. Forget how you treated me. Forget your own failures. Forget the truth. I remember everything. And I use it. You're cold, she spat. Money turned you into something cold and heartless. I considered this. You know what? You're probably right. I am colder than I used to be. I don't laugh as easily. I don't trust as quickly. I don't forgive as readily. You know what did that? Not money. You, mom, dad, everyone who spent years teaching me that kindness was weakness and love was a tool for manipulation. We never s- You did, every single day. And now you're upset because I learned the lesson too well. My mother rushed over, sensing the confrontation. Girls, please, this is supposed to be a celebration. I turned to her. You're right. It is a celebration. I'm celebrating 15 years of hard work, 7 years of planning, and 5 years of execution. I'm celebrating the fact that I did this without any of you, that I built something you could never tear down because you never knew it existed until it was too big to stop. Mira, we're your family. No. You're people who hurt me repeatedly and are now confused about why I won't give you the chance to do it again. My father joined the group, looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. Mira, that's enough. Whatever grievances you have, this isn't the place. Isn't it? This is my party, in my hotel ballroom, celebrating my company's success. If there's ever a place for me to speak my truth, it's here. A crowd had started to gather, sensing drama. My PR manager was making frantic signals, but I ignored her. This moment had been building for years, for 2 lifetimes, and I wasn't going to let it pass. Do you want to know why I'm successful? I asked, addressing my family but speaking loud enough for others to hear. It's not because I'm smarter than everyone else. It's not because I had advantages or connections. It's because I was forced to survive in an environment where I had no support, no safety net, no one who believed in me. You made me strong by trying to break me. You taught me self-reliance by refusing to be reliable. You showed me the value of success by withholding your love until I achieved it. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you took an interest in my life that wasn't about what I could do for you? When did you ever choose me over Elena? Silence. That's what I thought. So yes, I'm cold, I'm distant. I'm not the daughter you remember. Good. That daughter died. She died from neglect and loneliness and the desperate need to be loved by people who couldn't be bothered. What's left is someone who doesn't need you anymore. Someone who built an empire without you and will continue to thrive without you. Elena's face was red with rage. You think you're so special, don't you? You think having money makes you better than us? No, Elena. I think treating people with basic human decency makes me better than you. The money is just proof that the universe doesn't always reward cruelty. I turned to leave, then paused. There was one more thing. By the way, Dad, I'm terminating our contract. Your firm's trial period is over and you didn't meet expectations. My new counsel will be in touch about transitioning current cases. His face went white. Mira, you can't. I can. Read the contract. There's a clause allowing me to terminate at will. I'm exercising it. But this will ruin us. We restructured everything around your business. Then I guess you shouldn't have built your company around a daughter you never valued until she became profitable. Consider it a lesson in risk management. I walked away, leaving them standing in the middle of the ballroom. The crowd parted for me. Some faces showed sympathy, others showed respect, a few showed fear. I felt powerful. The party continued, but I was done. I'd made my point, delivered my message, drawn my line in the sand. Everything that came after was just cleanup. The aftermath was predictable. My parents tried calling, texting, showing up at my office. I had my assistant block them. Elena posted more rants on social media. I had my lawyer send cease and desist letters. Marcus attempted to reach out through mutual acquaintances. I made it clear I had no interest. My father's law firm did struggle after losing my contract. They had to downsize, close the San Francisco office, let go of the attorneys they'd hired. It wasn't a complete failure. They'd built some genuine expertise and had other clients, but they never recovered their footing. Good. My mother's soap business, which she'd restarted after Elena's modeling career failed, went bankrupt within 6 months. I may have had something to do with that. a few strategic reviews on key platforms, some information shared with regulators about labeling violations. Nothing illegal on my part, just information sharing. Elena eventually moved out of state to somewhere in the Midwest where the cost of living was lower and people didn't know her story. She deleted her social media accounts. Last I heard, she was working retail and living with a roommate. Marcus's family sold their hotel chain to a larger conglomerate. He took a middle management position at a regional bank. He married someone else, no one I knew, and had a couple of kids. His life was fine. Not spectacular, not terrible, just fine. And me? I thrived. Stellar Tech went from strength to strength. We acquired smaller companies, launched new products, expanded internationally. Within 3 years of going public, we were valued at $10 billion. My personal wealth topped $6 billion. I bought a penthouse in Manhattan, a beach house in Malibu, an apartment in Paris. I collected art, supported charities I actually believed in, invested in startups founded by people who reminded me of my younger self. Talented, driven, overlooked. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. I'd learned my lesson about trusting people with my heart, but I enjoyed companionship on my terms, with clear boundaries and honest expectations. I made real friends, people who knew me as Mira the person, not Mira the CEO. People who'd never heard me laugh in my previous life and therefore couldn't miss it in this one. Because I did laugh again, eventually. Not the loud, unrestrained laugh that Marcus had called annoying. Not the desperate, please love me laugh I'd used to try to win my family's approval, but a genuine laugh earned through real joy with people who actually cared about me. On my 30th birthday, I threw a small dinner party at my penthouse. Just 10 people, my closest friends, my most trusted colleagues, people who'd been with me through the journey. We ate good food, drank expensive wine, and told stories late into the night. At one point, someone made a joke. I don't even remember what it was, and I laughed, really laughed. The sound filled the room, unrestrained and genuine. One of my friends, a woman named Sarah, who'd been my COO for 3 years, smiled. I love your laugh. It's so real. I raised my glass. It is, because I finally am. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I stood on my balcony looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was living their diminished lives. My father, struggling with a mid-tier law practice. My mother, trying to maintain appearances despite their reduced circumstances. Elena, invisible and ordinary in a way she'd never imagined possible. And Marcus living his fine, forgettable life with someone who wasn't me. They would never hear my laugh again. Not because it was annoying, but because I had removed them from my life so completely that there was no opportunity for them to hear anything from me. I had won. Not just financially, though the money was nice. Not just professionally, though the success was satisfying. I had won because I had taken control of my own story, rewritten the narrative, and emerged as the protagonist of my own life instead of the side character in theirs. In my previous life, I had died at 26, alone and unloved, in a house full of people who'd never really seen me. In this life, at 30, I was surrounded by people who chose me, who valued me, who celebrated me, not for what I could give them, but for who I was. That was the real victory. I went back inside, poured myself one more glass of wine, and sat down at my piano. The one I'd bought myself, the one I'd learned to play through online tutorials and pure determination. I played for an hour, alone in my penthouse, playing music that no one but me would hear. And I smiled, because the girl who'd been told her laugh was annoying had built a life where she no longer needed anyone's approval to make a sound. She could laugh, cry, sing, or stay silent, entirely on her own terms. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. 5 years later, I was giving a commencement speech at Princeton. I'd been asked to speak to the graduating class about entrepreneurship, innovation, and success. I stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of eager young faces. And I thought about the girl I'd been at their age. Driven, desperate, determined to prove herself to people who would never appreciate her. Success, I began, is often defined by external metrics, money, titles, influence, and those things matter. They provide security, opportunities, freedom. But the most important success is internal. It's the moment when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to take up space in the world. When you stop performing for in-laws, audience that will never applaud and start living for yourself. I saw some students nodding, others looking confused. Good, let them think about it. I was once told that my laugh was annoying, that I was too loud, too much, too ambitious. For years, I tried to be smaller, quieter, more palatable. I tried to fit myself into a box that was too small because I wanted to be loved by people who were incapable of loving anyone but themselves. A few students sat up straighter, recognition flickering in their eyes. And then I stopped. I stopped trying to earn love from people who didn't deserve my effort. I stopped making myself small. I stopped being quiet. And I built something extraordinary, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right, to prove that I was worth my own investment. I paused, letting the words sink in. So, my advice to you as you go out into the world is this. Find people who celebrate your laugh, not people who tell you it's annoying. Build a life that makes you happy, not one that makes others comfortable. And if you have to burn some bridges to get there, make sure they're bridges to places you never want to return to anyway. The auditorium erupted in applause. Some students were crying, others were laughing. A few were doing both. After the ceremony during the reception, a young woman approached me. She was tiny, nervous, clutching her diploma like a lifeline. Ms. Donovan, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. I just wanted to say thank you. Your speech. It really resonated with me. I've been struggling with my family. They don't support my career choice, and they keep telling me I should be more like my sister, and She trailed off, tears forming. I handed her my card. Send me an email. Tell me about yourself, what you want to do. If you're serious about your goals and willing to work hard, maybe there's a place for you at my company. Her eyes widened. Really? Really, I believe in investing in people who've been underestimated. It tends to work out well. She thanked me profusely and rushed off to tell her friends. I watched her go, seeing a reflection of my younger self. Maybe that was the real point of all of this. Not just revenge, not just success, but creating opportunities for people like me. People who'd been told they were too much or not enough, people who'd been overlooked and underestimated. That night, back in my hotel room, I checked my phone. There was an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "From Elena." I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. Mira, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your time or attention, but I've been watching your success from afar, and I need to say this. You were right. About everything. I was jealous, cruel, and selfish. I took advantage of your kindness and never appreciated what I had. I convinced myself that I deserved special treatment because I was insecure and needed constant validation. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you, what we all did to you, and I'm sorry. I'm working on being better. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to build a life that doesn't rely on tearing others down. It's hard, and I'm not sure I'll succeed, but I'm trying. I hope you're happy. From what I've seen, you deserve to be. Elena, I read it 3 times. Then I saved it in a folder labeled closure and closed my laptop. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Her apology, however genuine, didn't change what she'd done. It didn't erase the years of abuse or the pain she'd caused, but it did provide something valuable. Confirmation that I'd been right to cut them out, that my choices had been justified, that walking away had been the correct decision. I slept well that night. 10 years after my rebirth, I was 35 years old. Stellar Tech was now one of the top 5 tech companies in the world, valued at over $50 billion. I'd expanded into artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space technology. I'd been featured on the cover of Time magazine, Forbes, and Fortune. I'd been named one of the most influential people in technology. I'd also started a foundation that provided scholarships and mentorship to young people from troubled family backgrounds. We helped thousands of kids every year, kids who were overlooked, underestimated, or actively sabotaged by the people who should have supported them. On the anniversary of my death from my previous life, I took the day off. I flew to a small cabin I owned in the mountains of Colorado completely alone, and I reflected on the journey. 2 lives, one painful, one triumphant. Same beginning, completely different ending. I thought about the version of me who'd died at 26, the one who'd believed that love and loyalty and sacrifice would be rewarded, the one who'd laughed freely and given her heart openly, the one who'd been broken by the people who should have protected her. I mourned her. Even though I was her, even though I'd lived her life, I mourned the innocence she'd had, the hope she'd carried, the belief that family meant something. But I didn't regret losing her, because what had emerged from those ashes was someone stronger, smarter, more capable. Someone who knew her worth and refused to accept less. Someone who'd turned pain into power and betrayal into triumph. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it in a toast. To second chances, I said aloud, and to never needing a third. I drank, set down the glass, and then I laughed. A real laugh, full of genuine joy and hard-won peace. He'd said my laugh was annoying. After my rebirth, he never heard it again. And that, I thought, was the most poetic justice of all.